Okay, it looks like we're live. All
All
right, I'm
right.
excited. We have Cleeton on, so really excited to have him. Say hi, Cleeton. There we go.
Hey, everybody, how's it going? Excited to be on with you, Mia.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you as well. Today is a topic I know we're both very passionate about, so it'll be fun. We're going to talk about why now is so important to be launching your marketing and ramping up your marketing, and if you haven't done any marketing, to start marketing. And I know there's a lot of conflicting opinions on if we should be marketing right now, if we should be
Right.
selling, and so it'll be good to get into that.
Sure.
But first, I told Cleeton, I said, don't change your background, because when we have team meetings in our office, I love his wife sitting behind him working, and then his kids are running around because they're not at school, and it's such
It's the
a
reality.
yeah, it really is. So, of course, they seem to always be better behaved kids than mine. Mine are always like yelling at me when I'm in a meeting. So,
Yeah, I always jokingly say the iPad does a great job watching them, so it keeps them involved.
true.
So,
Yep. And you're always good with the headphones. So,
yeah,
yeah, well,
works
good.
out.
Well, my background, for those that don't know me, my name's Mia Paulus, and I own a company called the Centr, and we do a lot of business services for the companies. And so, marketing is just one aspect of the services we provide for companies. And my background, even though it's in accounting and finance, has really my love has turned to marketing, and I just love just what marketing brings and all the depth that's with it, and that people might have great ideas, but if they don't market, then what's the point? So.
Right.
Cleeton, do you want to maybe go into a little bit about your background and maybe why you think it's more important now than ever to really market?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, yes, Cleeton Gumbs here. I've been with the center several months now, and I have a background. I originally started with graphic design, but at the time that I graduated, which was in 2009, um, graduated from college. You had to become. You couldn't just be a graphic designer anymore. You had to also learn how to build websites and also get into marketing, so ended up switching to a marketing degree, graduated with a marketing degree from UCF, and been in the field ever since. And, to the point of this topic, I think there's never a time to not market. It's always about being sensitive, right, to the right messaging, based off the time period that you're in, right? You always want to be sensitive to whatever your potential clients are dealing with, and then make sure that you're being supportive of that, but still moving the ball forward. So that's the conversation I know we're going to get into today that I'm excited to explore.
Yeah, no, that's great. I was listening to a live once of somebody that I'm friends with on Facebook, and he was talking about an email he had received, and it was pretty much hate mail saying, "How can you be selling during this time? And how can you be promoting somebody else's book?" And he was like using the F word and just like
Oh,
completely
Lord.
irate that people were selling. And I thought, if we don't support the businesses that can survive right now,
Right.
like our economy is going to be horrible when we actually are all functioning. So
That's
that's kind
right.
of
It's the truth. It's like the economy has to continue to go on, right? And I think one of the things we'll talk about today is, this is time for a lot of us. We're finding that now that you're spending more time at home, you have more time to get to the trainings and the development that you may have wanted to do. So for all of those individuals who are in the spaces where they train, right, and they develop people, they should feel empowered to want to sell their products and services, because it's just going to help develop people. So when we're on the other side of this, we're a stronger economy, we're a stronger nation, just because everyone is pursuing the things they want to do. They have better resources, a better understanding of why they're doing it.
Yeah. And I did a live, it's probably been a couple weeks ago, where I was talking about how now is the best time to really even start a business, because
Mm,
if you start it now, you're in a great position when the economy starts, and it does take a little bit to get your rhythm going, and it's also a great time to stay innovative. It forces you to figure out how to be innovative, because maybe you can't price things as high as you typically would in a stronger economy, and so you're
right.
forced to get a little more creative. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. And then on top of that, you have more time. Starting that business might have been more difficult with your commute, right? You might have had a 2-hour commute back and forth to work. There's 2 more hours in your day that you have now to focus on potentially starting your business or learning what it takes to run your business. So I think, just looking at the time component alone is major, right? And then you talked about the opportunity. So there is, there is a, because of the fact that, we're kind of tied more to our computers now, people are more attentive. So I don't know about yourself, but I'm going through my email more often than I ever did, right? I never, before it was more so, let me go through and delete what I don't need so I could clear it because it's just too many emails. Now I'm kind of like, oh, I didn't know this company was reaching out to me. I didn't know that. So, this is potent time for you to really, obviously, like we don't, here at the center or just as marketers, period, we don't ever want to say, oh, this is your opportunity. You don't want to, use it in that terms, but you want to be present at a time when you can be present. It's the best way to put it. Yeah.
No, that's great. And I think, I always think, people have their agency whether to buy something or not. Just like in 2008, people still had money in 2008. They were just holding it back.
Right.
So if they see something that you're putting out that they're like, hey, I need that, you're doing them a service to give them that. And they have the agency to buy or not. So it's not like you're doing, you're not pushing it on them. And I think it's important to be sensitive of the time period and not capitalize on things, with the language that you use and making sure that you're mindful of the language.
Right. And it's something really big you said, in a time like this, for whatever reason, the perception is money is gone, right? Like there's no more money, like you gotta hoard it. And, but if we are to rebuild the economy like we had to do 10 years ago, right, you had to just get back out there and take chances and do that. So we're going to find ourselves in that same ballpark pretty soon here. And like I said, if we can really grasp that this is the time to really get that marketing plan together, that strategy together, that, if you can grasp that, then you can really take advantage of being on, I take a perfect example. In 2008, podcasting had just started. So a lot of individuals, take Pat Flynn, right? You take Lewis Howes, right? Some of the heavy hitters now. Well, back then, on the tail end of the economy crashing, they took advantage of the time frame and they started podcasting. And they were consistent with that. And now 10, 12 years later, they're the top of the game. They have large marketing companies that they're able to reach and help people in a drastic and in a major way. Well, it's because they looked at the time that they had and they used the tools that they had at the time, which was podcasting was that new thing, which you see us on lives, right? Lives tend to be that shift in the marketing world. And they jumped on it and they were consistent. So I think, this is that time where you can really lean in on that.
Yeah, no, and I think you hit on the head. Like consistency is the key, and starting is the key too. I can speak from experience. I went from being heads down building the Centr for over a decade to being like, oh, I actually now have to get out there. My team kicked me out and says you need to now be the brand that's out there, and I need to start doing Facebook Lives and creating content, and it's kind of scary just because it's new, and I don't. But I can tell you that starting. You can read all the books. For 2 years, I read tons of marketing books. I read all this stuff. I just indoctrinated myself with marketing. But not until you start do you really fully start to understand it or grasp it. And then you start to be able to build on that. And then you can start getting more and more consistent with it. And it's that consistency, I believe, like you said, that is so key into with marketing and building that. So one of the things we'll maybe segue into is people's opinions, like with experts. I read a post once on a Facebook where the guy's like, I've been following all these key players, and I think he's probably listening, like Russell Brunson and you have Pat Flynn and Amy Porterfield and Frank Kern and Brendan Burchard, and I mean, you can list all these big players, and but it's like, you can follow all of them, and I do, but at the end of the day, if you're trying to implement all of their strategies, it becomes overwhelming, and so you have to pick in one expert, if anything, and just focus in on them or their strategies and their keys, and then go all in, and then you can tweak and refine and be more agile with it. So any thoughts around that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think you hit it on the head. It's the strategy, right? So you're looking at, I think in that example is a perfect example of, a person having too many strategies. And then, it's what's the phrase? jack of all trades, master of none, right? So you could be that, you can have that same issue with a strategy, right? You can have too many strategies that you don't have any success. And I think, the reality is, and this is something you and I have talked about in our meetings, you want to start with something that best fits the why and the brand that you're building, right? That most aligns. So in this regard, you're looking at experts, right? There's so many experts, and where they're talking about the same marketing concepts. They're just using slightly different approaches, right? And I think we're naturally, just like in relationships, we're naturally going to lend ourselves to one expert over the other. So the key is to, like you mentioned, and you find one expert and you really dig into that expert's strategy. You learn the ins and outs of it, and you actually, which is the key part we're talking about today, is you'll be consistent with the implementation of it. Right. So a lot of times we are like, oh, this is awesome. We're reading it in a book. We may even start planning it out, but until we actually implement it, we don't really know how it works or how it resonates with ourselves and with our audience. So,
Yeah.
Starting with that one, and then now that you've kind of made that your strategy, now you can start to add some of these other experts, and in a way that doesn't totally tear down your whole strategy, but that adds to it, and that's what we've been able to do here at the Centr. We've been able to develop a framework based off of several experts, but it came from starting with one and then kind of leaning into the other. Like, oh, I like the way they approach webinars. I like the way this one approaches podcast engagement building, right? I like the way this one approaches Facebook Lives and then paid advertising, right? So you can get to that place, but you have to start somewhere. And
yeah,
and it's like that with anything in life, right? You have to stick with something, become a master in it, so that you can get feedback on how successful a particular thing is before you can say it's not successful. So
yeah, no, that's great. So we've talked about not being too spread out with too many strategies, especially if you're the only one. I mean, if you have a full team, like we have several different strategies, but we can have different people working on those different strategies. So it's marketing is much more complex than it used to be. There's so many more things that you have to do and so many more platforms you have to be on. So maybe you've heard me use this word before, so I'll have you explain it based on a word that I used. And the word came from, I was in Puerto Rico at a mastermind group with John Lee Dumas, and I happened to say a phrase and I didn't really think anything of it until I had like 10 people coming up to me and they're like, I want to know more about content repurposing. And that was like the buzzword. I'm like, I didn't even think twice about the phrase that I had used. Mm-hmm. And so what is your kind of, now that you've been kind of doing that for my brand and other clients and things like that, like what is your opinion of content repurposing?
Well, I think,
and what is it? Maybe define it for
right.
I don't understand it.
Yeah, sure. I think it's definitely necessary, especially with all of the platforms, and the same argument can be made about starting with one platform, learning the voice and the style of that platform, and then branching out to the others. But the whole concept of content repurposing is let's take this live for example. This is going to be anywhere from 20 minutes to 40 minutes of content that is rich. It focuses on several concepts that can be talked about again, right? So, we use here at the Centr, we use this upside down pyramid strategy. You might have heard of it from, wow, his name just went away. Gary Vee. Gary Vee uses the upside down pyramid strategy. And what it simply is, and this will define what repurposing is. You basically take one piece of content and you look at switching it into a different form of medium, right? So let's say if that content right now is a video live recording, you take that and then you're going to take snippets out of it, right? And you can make smaller Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram posts that are just like a 5-minute snippet of a statement that both you or myself made during this live. You can also take that same piece of content. You can transcribe it into text. Take that, you can clean it up and make a blog post out of it. The same piece of content, you can just take the auto recording, put an intro on it and an outro on it, and now you have a podcast. So it's a really strategic way to not reinvent the wheel every time, because I know some of us, we get held up where like, I don't know what to write next. I got to keep coming up with new content. Or in the reality, a lot of times when we make a piece of content, we can really use that content in several ways. We can put it on, and those different examples I just used. One is a podcast, right? So now you're having it distributed on Spotify and Apple podcasts and Google podcasts, right? And iHeartRadio. But then also you take a blog post. Now it's on your website. It can be on your LinkedIn blog post, right? So now you start to see this distribution happen from one piece of content. So that's something that we really use effectively here at the Centr. We use it with the Meopolis brand, and it really simplifies your marketing strategy because it allows you to, like I said, not reinvent the wheel on every piece of content. You really start large and the top of that upside down pyramid, and then you funnel down to the different
yeah, it's great.
platforms.
And so you don't get so overwhelmed. What the Centr did with me, what the team is so great at is like, Mia, you are better at video, so and doing audio than or off the cuff, like Ashley, who's on. I see her messaging. She will literally just get on a Zoom call with me and like, we're just going to go through questions, because if she sends me a huge document of like handwritten stuff that I have to go and sit down and type, it'll never happen. But if she just gets on a Zoom call with me, like she can crank through those in 30 minutes with me. And plus, I'm so much better off the cuff when I don't have to prepare. And so the team knows that. And so if I do those types of things, then they can get much more content from me. And so I think it's also important to know, like, what are you good at? Are you better at copywriting and writing? Are you better at videos? And then first focusing in on those strengths. And because the more you get comfortable with that, then you can start to add more things. I mean, I'm not saying don't do video because you're not comfortable with it, because I've only gotten better with video because I've started to do them more. And so, but don't overwhelm yourself, and start with one. And because then you can use a team like the Centr or somebody to repurpose it for you. So just figure out a way to get the content out of your brain and out of your head, and then a team can help you facilitate and distribute that across multiple platforms.
Yeah, and that's a strategy I think that goes unspoken for a lot of times, because a lot, when we're starting out, we only see ourselves, right? We think only, oh, I'm going to be the only one that's interested in this business idea, or I don't have the resources, right? So you're worried about how much it's going to cost to get a team, when if you just start at one part of this whole puzzle, right? If you start with, I know that I'm really good with just going off the cuff, get my phone, and I'm just going to record myself. Let's say if you're trying to write a book, that's a good example. A lot of times, like, I'm not a great writer. It's like, well, you don't have to be a great writer. You just have to have the vision of the book. Let's start first with recording yourself, and you can record every chapter. Then your next part of that process, you spend some time, looking to partner with someone who can help you write it, or you go, like we talked about earlier, you go spend this time to get the training, right? There's experts out here who will literally say step by step, this is how you write the book. This is how you write the apex of the book. This is how you write the beginning and the end, right? So it's about understanding that you don't have to have all the answers. You can really lean in, on the team, like the Centr. You can really start to connect with experts, like Mia herself here. You connect with experts who's been in the same ballpark that you've been in, and then they can say, "Oh, that's what you're dealing with. You need a team," or, "Hey, maybe you need to just go listen to this training here. It's a 30-minute training. I guarantee you, when you're done with it, you'll have clarity on what to do." So, it's about being resourceful,
Yeah, I agree. And sometimes I think we have to be perfect with things. Yeah. And I was talking with the publisher, and he was saying, like, you don't need to write the book. You just need to write a book.
That's good.
Because books are, we're used for a lot of times for marketing, and you usually don't make all the money on the book. You make on what the book, the lead generation you can get from the book is why you do books, right? And so it was cool to hear that, like, you don't need to try to write the most perfect book it's like the book, you just need to write a book.
Yeah, so, I heard for the average, actually from Donald Miller, book writer, one of the experts, we use some of his strategy. He said the average writer, their third book is actually the book that really is a successful one. So even in that saying, is so true, because it's like you're thinking like, I have to knock it out the park with this first one. It's really, no, you just have to just get it out, right? Get it out, get some feedback, and then you'll be surprised how much progress you make once you get that initial feedback. So
that's actually what Russell Brunson did. If you think about it, he just wrote Traffic Secrets book, and then he reread his first two books, .com Secrets and Expert Secrets. He's like, man, I was a bad writer. Or, just saying how bad he was. So he actually went back and rewrote the first two books, and then he made a trilogy out of all three of them. And so it's it doesn't have, you don't have to be perfect to do that. So cool. So one area I want to make sure we cover is because people maybe aren't willing to spend as much right now, and it doesn't mean that all people aren't, so it doesn't mean that you can't sell higher ticket items, but there's something common in the marketing world that maybe business owners aren't familiar with called the value ladder. Do you want to maybe kind of dig into the value ladder and why that's important for a time like today?
Oh, absolutely. So value ladder is a powerful concept. Russell Brunson talks about it. A lot of experts talk about it in their own way, right? Value ladder is really important in your sales funnel process, because what happens is all of us, we have business owners and individuals who work for organizations. There is the big product or service that you have, and a lot of times, depending on the size of the company, it's going to be a very expensive product, right? It could be expensive product or an expensive service. So when we're looking to market that, a lot of times if we think about a relationship, right, that would be the equivalent to the marriage, right? So it's like we can't, send an email out and say, hey, let's get married. Like, okay, this is the first email. You told me who you are. Now you're asking me to get married. Just a little soon. Like, I need to learn a little bit more about you. I need to know if I'm going to like your family, like what's going on here, right? So what happens is a value ladder really allows that rapport and that relationship building to happen. And, one of the things that, a marketing term that initiates that is what we call a tripwire, right? So tripwires sit in the value ladder, and a tripwire is a very, very unique way of just changing the relationship or changing the way that you look at the relationship between you and the prospect. So the prospect is someone who's curious, right? They're like, oh, I can see this product possibly helping me out. I'm curious. I keep seeing Mia on these lives. I'm curious, right? A tripwire is going to say, okay, if you're curious, right, why don't you join this mastermind group, or why don't you join this Facebook group, or why don't you join my email list, right, and my newsletter list, and to do so, there is a small fee. There's $5 fee or $15 fee or whatever. It's something that's really small compared to that big item that you want to ultimately sell your client, right? So you introduce a tripwire. And what that does, it changes them from a prospect to now they're a client. They just became a client, and it was just a very low barrier to become a client. Now the conversation is a little bit more, candid. Not candid is, I don't know if that's the right word, but it's a little bit more natural, right?
A little more trust too.
More trust. Thank you. The trust is there. Now they become a client. So now when you're talking to them, it's not like, stop trying to sell me. It's more like, okay, yeah, I'm in your group, or I've used this 30-minute training that taught me how to use Canva. I don't know, right? It's something small, but what it does is it tripwire, it changes the relationship, and that's one of the first or entry levels to your value ladder. And from there, you take them up another step. Now, keeping in mind that you have this large product or this large program or wherever that is that you ultimately want them to consume. But, you step them up to that, right? So after you've made that initial low barrier entry, you take them up another level, give them more exclusivity, more entry, more value. That could be a exclusive group. Instead of the group being 100 people, now this group is 25 people. And if you're a coach or if you're an expert, you're going to go into more details on strategy, marketing strategy, sales strategy, right? Administrative strategy, may cover all of those things, but now they're going to perceive more value because now they're a client, they trust you more, they're willing to spend more. So now instead of spending $15, now I'm willing to spend $500. And now they're spending $500, they spend some time with you there, and then so on and so forth. So you nurture that, just like in our relationship example, before I'm ready to get married, I've spent some time. Maybe this first one is like, let me introduce you to my friends, right? This next one is, okay, let me introduce you to my family, right? And then, we work through that and see how that impacts our relationship. And now we're at the thing where we want to do to move forward. So, and that's the commitment level that ultimately you want them to be, but you're having to make what we call micro commitments along the way and while you're making those micro commitments, you're giving them value the whole way through.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll equate that to kind of my value ladder that I've built. So as a visionary, I had this little kind of mind map type diagram I had, and it was to the everyday person would be very overwhelming. I had all these ideas because they're all ways that it could further my mission or my vision or my why of what I wanted to do. But I always knew that as the Centr grew and became the engine of everything, all these other pieces would become really critical to help fulfill the mission. So back in the day, I always just thought I was kind of just a crazy visionary with all these ideas. And then when I learned about the value ladder, I'm like, oh, all it really is just multiple steps of the value ladder. Right. And so, for instance, like I created a $7 mastermind group so that we could have a low barrier to entry for entrepreneurs. My whole goal was to just create a large community of business owners that spent just a little bit to show they were serious and really weeded out some of those that aren't serious, but it wasn't too overwhelming where it was too much of a barrier to entry for them to come in. And so then I was like, but then I love doing like real hot seat type masterminds where you have breakout sessions. And so I created a one more level up of a mastermind where which I call innovation huddles, where we can really kind of mastermind together and innovate together. And then obviously if businesses are ready and they want to outsource a lot of things or have an extension of their team and a full team to support them, then they might buy a subscription model with us where they have access to all of the services we have. And there are people that will obviously go in at the higher end right away. Right. And there's some people but need to maybe start with that $7 one to move up. And the other thing I just want to briefly mention, I think I actually might do a different live just on this topic because I think it will take too much time to go into depth, but there's so much marketing out there and it's so broad and so many things that can get overwhelming. And as I've studied marketing, I realized that there's really only a few areas that you really need to focus on. And let me see if I can find it in my notes. One area is social selling. So I actually just recently revamped our entire sales team and actually really got rid of it and really made it part of almost marketing where it becomes more social selling. Like for me, I need to go engage in social media and start to create relationships, figure out where our clients are at, what groups they're a part of, and start engaging with them. So there's that type of part of marketing, which is that social side. And then you have like the sales funnel paid ad side, which is, the social selling is more like where people are congregating. And then the second one is buying. And that's where like the sales funnel and the paid ad side. And if it's done right, you can actually get people. In fact, Russell just did that with me today. I'm like, how many upsells can you have in a funnel? And then and I think he had like 4 or 5 different upsells in his book funnel. And I'm like, and I bet you it's converting because, he's already built that trust. So for him, he can have 4 upsells like he did. And so he was able to quickly move people in their value ladder just literally by clicking to the next screen of the sales funnel. If you don't know what sales funnels are, we can do another live on that as well.
Right.
And then the third one is about organic reach. And I know Cleeton, you and your team do really good from the organic reach side and really just getting out there on all platforms. Like we had talked about content repurposing and what that is. And then the fourth one is kind of, I would say, lead nurturing. So, you have all these leads and now you need to send them email sequences or you have a distribution list. And so like I've been, our framework really focuses on all 4 of those areas.
Sure.
And I think it's so important as you grow to start making sure you're doing all 4 of those elements.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. I mean,
I don't think you've ever heard me say those things. I kind of had.
Yeah, I'm about to say, yeah.
So it's probably new to you.
Right. Yeah, I think it's the first. We've talked about the 4 different things separately, but I think we need to definitely get that into some marketing material. That's awesome.
So it's like those 4 things. I think we'll do a separate live on. We'll create a framework around it, and then we can do a separate live on those. Yeah. So that's great.
Yeah. Cool. I agree with all. I think those things are an absolute must, and today, especially the social, we've talked a lot about the social selling aspect because we're in a day of time with social media where And that's obviously a social media heavy strategy, but it's really about authenticity and having that casual but driven conversation to really help, your potential clients. You're looking to solve their problems. It's ultimately what we're doing. That's why we wake up in the morning, right? That's why we get in front of our computers now, or eventually get back on the road and go to your physical places, right? But you do that because you want to help people change life. So that social selling piece is really dear to me because it's a way that we're looking to kind of redefine and reapproach that sales conversation, and really take someone down what feels to them a personal path to really solve their problem. So
yeah, and talk about a great thing to do right now, because you can do social selling without selling. You're just engaging with customers or clients that are your ideal clients, and
yes,
and trying to find ways to serve them and give them value. And so it's really a perfect time to really dig in, and it doesn't cost money. It just takes some of your time, and I think we all have a little more time than we typically have had in the past. So.
Right. I mean, it's something as simple as jumping on their lives, right? And listening to what they're talking about, listening for pings. And you're like, oh, that's something they're dealing with. So you can come. And now if you sent them a message, you have to actually consume their content, they're going to be more willing to listen to you talk about what your company can offer because you've spent time learning about them. So it's so much you could go into. That could be its own live as well.
I know. It sounds like I'm just going to briefly mention this, but I think it's important to understand. But don't want we can just spend, like you said, a whole life doing that. So, so in summary, like, what would you say to those that are like, you really want me to market right now? Like, what would you say to them?
Oh, absolutely do it. Think about 2008. Think about any podcast you've listened to in the last 10 years, and you realize those individuals understood that it was time to take action in 2008. We're in a different scenario, but it's a very similar effect on our world. I mean, at that time, it affected our world in the same regard. So, not to say I'm looking at this as an opportunity, but I'm being present in the moment, and I'm going to take that time to go find that expert, right? Go find a company like the Centr where I can, I've been having all these ideas. Maybe I want to write a book. Maybe I want to, launch my business, but I just don't have all the resources. Well, this is the time to start the conversation. This is the time to go get the training. This is the time to spend the necessary time developing yourself so that when we're on the other side of this, you're already ready to hit the ground running and take advantage. And I'm real careful with that because I don't want it to come off this, but you want
I know
to be
we're so used to using the word capitalize, and it just doesn't feel right now, so we can't use it. Just start.
Just start. That's the best way to put it. This is the best time to start. And reach out to organizations like the Centr, like Mia Paulus. You want to reach out to these individuals at this time because this is where you can get answers to it's probably a small question you have while you're not starting, right? So get that question answered, and then let's see what it looks like.
Yeah. And having a team, the Centr helps me so much with my social that I'll put the domain in here in the comments here. So I'm actually going to type it in right now.
Cool.
And the reason why I love having them is they're kind of my accountability partner because they have their own regimen and their schedule, and they know I have to keep producing content for them to keep delivering, and so it's just really cool. And just this morning, Cameron, our president of the Centr, he had said a quote. He says, "The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, but the next best time is right now." And so, if you didn't get in at the 2008 when all that was happening, and then, like now is the best time to really start. So
yeah, totally
great.
Agree.
Awesome. Well, this is good. You're good at this, Cleeton. This has been fun. We'll keep doing this.
Hey, let me know anytime. This is awesome. I know you and I we could go for hours. So
yeah. So we try to keep them between that 20 to 40 minutes. So we're at 35 minutes now. So Cleeton, this was great. We'll do another live. I think it'd be cool. Let's build out that framework we were talking about, and then jump on and do another live around that. I think it'd be great.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have fun with that. All
okay.
right. Thanks.
All right. Thanks everyone. Bye.